Hi, I'm Wade from Thoroughbred Diesel, and today we're going to be installing a set of ARP 2000 head studs on this 6.0 Powerstroke. Alright, so we've got a 6.0 Powerstroke here in the shop. We got the cab up on it. We're doing head gaskets on it for a friend of the company. We want to take this opportunity to really show you how to install the head studs on these 6.0 motors and get them torqued down correctly, and just a few tips and tricks that we use. So this is not a complete video on how to get the heads off of a 6.0 or anything like that. This is just simply concentrating on head stud installation on these motors. We're going to go over the M8 inner row head bolts as well, installing a set of those from ARP, part number 250-4206. And we're going to show you proper torque on a set of the ARP 2000 head studs, which is the Old Faithful part number 250-4202, which many of you all know and love. So the 6.0 head gaskets, one of the most common failures out there in the field. This is a very common job. It's a very big job, but it's a job that a lot of you guys are tackling. You're tackling in your driveway. So, you know, tearing something like this down is pretty much is not as easy as, hey, tear it all apart and here you are. But once you get to portions like this, where it's, you know, it gets a little bit more technical, we wanted to go over that. So, where we are right now in our installation, we've got our new head gasket on, block clean, everything ready to go, and we've got our new head sit on the truck. Now, this is a set of Unlimited Diesels O-ring 6.0 heads that they've got. These are brand new, no core. We've got a separate video on that we'll link you to. We're concentrating on torquing these babies down today. So we just have the head on. Now, you guys that are familiar with this, with the 6.0 cylinder head, you have the cylinder head, but then you have the what I call a rocker box will sit on top of that. Then the head studs actually go through it. So you're actually sandwiching you know, two different assemblies in the rocker box and then the head itself to the engine cylinder. So we're going to show you all that. But when I set a head on, put it on the dowels on the new head gasket, I always sit it on and get there, and I'll just put one stud in it just to hold it in place. And then I'll go through and go ahead and put all of my glow plugs in, and then I will sit on my rocker box, which is what we're going to do right now. All right, so we've got a rocker box now, getting ready to set it on the head. We've only got the one stud in here. And just one thing I wanted to say, you want to make sure on these rocker boxes that you've got the two locating dowels in the rocker box for these heads. This rocker box shift is, you want to make sure that you don't have rocker box shift in this. So we're just going to go ahead and make sure that those two dowels are there, and then set this rocker box right on the head. The two rocker box bolts, this is an 06 truck. There's a couple different configurations of what each one of these different years have. But the two rocker box bolts, I just go ahead and put them in the rocker box and just sandwich the head together. I don't fully tighten them down, but I do run them down finger tight. I'm kind of OCD about stuff like this because when I'm doing stuff like this, I want to make sure that I stay in the same pattern. I find that if you do that, that helps you with a lot of different things. It helps you with torque sequences. It helps you to remember you know, that you just don't forget a bolt or whatnot. So I just run those in finger tight, and then I go for placing my studs. We're gonna go ahead and start putting our studs in the head now. But let's talk about a little bit about cleaning the block up here for your head studs. I didn't make mention of this at the beginning. You want to go through before you put your head on, make sure you clean out the block really good. The 6.0 head studs, they're metric 14 by 2. You'll want to go through and get yourself a bottoming tap and then clean each one of the holes out, and then go through and blow each one of the holes out in the block and make sure they're good and clean. I think that the torque that is placed on this head is one of the greatest, the most important things that you're going to do to making these head gasket jobs on these trucks live. So with that being said, we're going to go ahead and start placing our studs in the block here. The coarse end goes into the block. And when you place the stud in, you only want to run the stud down hand tight. You want to put a little bit of the ARP lubricant on the stud. This is a 3/16 Allen Allen head, Allen wrench, whatever you want to call it. Sorry, Allen wrench. And then what I do is I'll take a stud and I'll run it in the bore and I'll work it back and forth 2 or 3 times just to make sure that the threads at the bottom are very good and clean. And then I'll just take it and I'll simply tighten it down by hand. So I'll know where the bottom is on the stud. I'll verify that. Then I'll go back in and I'll just put it hand tight only. It tells you right inside your instructions, hand tight only. So I'll start with the center. And another thing that I do, here's another OCD thing. As I'm going with this, what I'll do is I'll go through and I'll do it in the pattern of the tightening pattern, which you don't have to do that again. It's just me being crazy. But I'll do it in the tightening pattern of where I'm going to tighten the head studs down. So you'll go top to bottom, 3 to 4, and I'll show you that when we go back through our tightening sequence. So I'm going to go ahead and place all these studs through the rocker box and into the engine block. 3/16 Allen, we'll run these down, but then we only hand tighten those and make sure that when we get to the bottom, we clean it out 2 or 3 times. And then hand tight only on the studs. Next, I'll go through and go ahead and put my push rods in the motor. You'll just go in and you put a little lube on the end of your push rods, just like so, and then into the push rod holes. And you want to make sure that as you're putting your push rods in, that you'll feel the push rods hydraulically touch the lifters, and then they make almost a hydraulic union there. So they'll have just this little bit of resistance, kind of a soft feeling resistance. That's when you know you've got it in the correct position on the lifter. So we're going to go through and put all of our push rods in. All right, we're gonna put our valve bridges on now. What I like to do is I like to go through and we keep this ARP assembly lube, ultra torque lube around. I'll go through and put just a little bit of it on the valve stems on each one of them down through there. Then I'll go through on my valve bridges and I'll clean each one of them out real good, make sure that there's nothing that's gonna interfere with the tolerances there. Then I go through and just pop each one on the bridge, make sure that that you've got movement there. But checking them for cleanliness, which we'll have to do with your tolerances, is the most important part of this. So that's what we'll do, and then we'll go through and get these valve bridges on and get ready to put our rocker arms on. All right, we're ready to go ahead and put our rocker arms on now, and I'm just going to set the rocker arms on, and then I'm going to, and then I'll go through and I'm going to torque them. But when I'm doing my rocker arms, I want to check to make sure my point where it touches the valve bridge, I want to make sure that that's good and clean and doesn't have any contaminants in it. And then where my push rod's going to go is clean, no contaminants, nothing in there that's going to screw up any of the tolerances. I go back and I put just a little bit of this Lucas lube inside of the ball socket there, and I just put just a touch where it's going to touch the valve bridges. All right. Then I'll use just a little bit of ARP torque lube and I'll put it on the onto the rocker or the rocker bolt itself. Then I just make sure that my push rod is lined up with my rocker and that the end of the rocker is touching the valve bridge. And I'm going to go ahead and just finger tighten down my rocker bolts. And that's pretty much what I'm going to do through each one of these. So I'm going to go ahead and get those. You want to be very careful working around this because you've got these plastic keepers on the rockers, and then they can break. I suggest putting those on new. But yeah, what we're going to do now is we're going to go through, we're going to get all the rockers on and get them ready to be torqued down. All right, and before we start applying torque, I like to get all the bolts placed, and that'll include these metric 8s upper row bolts there. And like I said, this doesn't come with your head stud kit. This is a separate item. We do definitely suggest getting this little upsell here. Makes it really, really nice. So We'll go ahead and we'll get all those placed and get them threaded in as well, and then we're going to start a torque sequence. All right, guys, it's torque time now. So I'm going to talk a couple of things about this. We have all of our bolts are in, and we have our stud nuts. We have them just finger tight. Everything is finger tight here. And one thing that you want to do, and you want to make sure of, is you go through and you look and see if there's any separation between your rocker box and the head and the block. That's going to tell you you've got a misalignment somewhere. Possibly you've put tension on these rocker arms and before you should have. But anyway, so it's time for our torque sequences. Now, with the ARP 2000 head studs, we're going to be taking these to 210 foot-pounds. Is going to be our final torque. ARP's instructions tell us to do that in 3 equal torque sequences. So that's going to be 70 each time, 70, 140, 210. And then you have your torque pattern comes in the ARP instructions. So we're going to use those there. So that's what we're going to do. It's just time to start clicking off. We'll talk about a couple things here. Number one, I'm going to tell on myself. You guys are going to see us doing this. You're going to see me using a chrome socket, and you're not going to be very pleased with it. Trust me, I'm not pleased with it either. We have looked all day today and cannot find our 18 metric 12-point impact socket. I cannot find it. It has walked off. It has been imperative for us to complete this video today, so we are going to be doing this with a chrome socket. I do not suggest that. I suggest you use an impact grade socket. Next thing I suggest for you to use is a good quality torque ratchet. Now you can use, let me say it again, you use a torque ratchet that's been calibrated. It doesn't matter what the brand is on it. 1/2-inch drive, I definitely suggest. The nice one about the Snap-on is it's got a swivel head on it, so it just makes it to where you can clear things like these up pipes. Longer handle, the better, and then there you are. So like we said, we're taking it to a 210 final. We're going to be going to 70 foot-pounds here on the first one. And then we're going to be going in the pattern, and I'm going to show you my pattern, and I'm also going to show you a couple of things that I do here. Well, the pattern that they tell us to, the Ford pattern. So 70 foot-pounds being our first one. Let's click it off, and then we'll do 2 or 3 here. So you're going to be just clicking through this. You're going to start at the stud in the very middle. All right, and then we're going to go to the one directly underneath of it. Straight good pulls, and then I'm going to go up and back 1 to our 3rd torque. As you're pulling this down, especially when you're working on these rocker arms, you want to make sure that everything is staying straight. Now we're going to go from number 3 to our number 4 torque, and at our number 4 torque, we're going to go ahead and click it off. And I've already forgotten a step. I'm going to show you here in just a second. Okay. What I do as I'm going through my torques, and I've already forgotten it, so you can see why this is going to be very important to me. I keep a paint pen. And the reason why I keep a paint pen is for situations just like I have demonstrated to you here. And I like to paint, just put a dot on them as I complete a sequence. So when I've completed my first sequence, I'll go on the nut, and I'll put just a little paint mark on it. And that tells me that I have done my first sequence on there. Of course, I'm going to end up with 3 paint marks on this. I completed that one, so I'm going to wipe the grease off. I'm going to put a little paint mark on it. And I'm going to head to my next torque. So I was right here last. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to be moving down the row, exactly opposite to it. This takes a little bit of time, but you never lose your spot like this. When I'm out here in the shop doing something like this, I'll have somebody come through, wants to ask a question, something like that nature. So we're going to go to 6. As you're pulling these down, you want to watch these rocker arms, make sure you're getting good torques on those, and then you're not having anything get out of line with your push rod. So you got a couple different things you're watching here. You're watching quite a few different things with these 6.0 Powerstrokes when you're doing these, but little tips for you. So that was 6. We're going to move all the way back here to number 7. And then up and forward to 8. And then 9. All the way back. And then 10. All right, so I've gone through all of them. I've done them all to 70. And I'm going to tell you something that I do, and I don't know that this is right, but I read this years and years and years ago, back when dinosaurs roamed the earth, and I can't remember the engine builder's name, but Top Fuel Dragster machines. He's one of the best in the country at the time, guy out of California. He talked about when he did head torques sequences on this. He would do one torque sequence and he would not do the second torque sequence for another 24 hours. He would let it sit up. That's not what I do. You guys on these shops, you all are going to have time to do this, but I will walk away from this. I will let this set up. I'll walk away for 10 or 15 minutes before I do my next sequence. You know, and it's just what I do. That's just what I do. It lets my paint dry on my marks. It lets everything settle in. You know, that I notice that when I do that, I also don't have studs jump like they do if I just try to click through. So that's what I do. So that's what we're going to do here. We're going to cut away and we're going to come back to our final torque sequence of 210. And I'm going to click through that last one with you. All right, our final torque sequence of 210. Everybody gets to watch me struggle through 210. I know Adam's excited about it. Shoot. So 210 is your final torque sequence, and then you will do your these metric gauge, what they call the inner row bolts. I called them top row a minute ago, but in metric gauge you take them to 25 foot-pounds. So 210. Here we go. That was 8. Here's 9. And then the last one is 10. Top front corner. There it is. 210 all the way through. So now we're going to set up a 3/8 drive ratchet and do our metric 8s to 22 or 25 foot-pounds. So our metric 8s up here, we're going to do 3 torque sequences on them to take them to 25. So 8 foot-pounds on each one. I just snug a little bit. I'll make contact with each one. I'll give a little bit on it. And then I'll come back and do that again, and I'll finally click it off to the final number. I don't paint mark these, probably should, but if I lose track of 5, probably in a bad shape anyway. Just a snug on the first round. A little snugger on the next round. Click that final off right here. Again, 25 foot-pounds here. You alternate just like I'm doing. And that's it. I will go through and I will paint mark those to show that I have torqued them for my own knowledge. 10 metrics, we're going to go through these and we're going to click off all the torques on our rocker arms. I'm going to snug these down because they traveled quite a bit farther down as they were in sequence. So we will go through and get ready. So we're going to start in the middle and just work our way out just like we would with a normal torque sequence. Again, torque spec on this is 23 foot-pounds. And there it is. All of our rocker arm bolts are torqued. I will paint mark them to show that I have completed those tasks. And now all we're left with is our 2 rocker box bolts. I just take them to and I've looked for this torque for years, and I still have yet to find anybody that makes mention of what the torque is for these. I just take them to 23 foot-pounds, so that's what I'm going to do here. And there they are. That is the bolts for the head and the rocker boxes and the rocker arms torqued down and ready to go. So this is our suggestion on how to do your sequence, torques, and product to use ARP for your 6.0 head studs. This is a tried and true product. They have been in the field doing this for years. ARP was one of the manufacturers at the forefront of fastener technology, one of the first ones to come out with, or the first one to come out with a head stud for this engine to solve the head gasket issue and the clamping force issue that has been an inherent thing with this motor. So we hope you learned something from this video and gave you some tips going forward, especially some of you guys maybe even that were old pros. Maybe we gave you another way to look at it or something of that nature. So if you have a question about ARP products or 6.0 Powerstrokes or anything of that nature, just give us a call, and we appreciate you watching.